I lived in a small suburbish area of a small town. My house was very close to my grandparents' house. It went my house on one block. A large church with a large parking lot was the entirety of the next block, and then the block of my grandparents' house. My grandparents were both retired, so every day during summer while their parents were at work, a few of my cousins and I would spend the day at my grandparents'. Honestly, it was such a fun childhood to have. When I was around 11, my parents bought us a dog. One of my chores during the summer was to walk over to my house and let the dog out to use the bathroom, and then go back to my grandparents'. One of my cousins, who was a year older than me, would always go with me. Well, one day when we were on our way back to my grandparents', a guy drove next to us. It was one quick motion. He opened his car door and yelled, "Gotcha!" My cousin and I took off running. He quickly shut his door and sped ahead of us into the parking lot of the church. Instead of running through the parking lot, my cousin and I ran behind the church, but continued in the direction of my grandparents'. When we emerged from the backside of the church, the guy was still in the parking lot, his head on a swivel, looking for us. We continued to run. A few heartbeats later, he spotted us. We heard his tires squeal again after us. Thankfully, we were very close to my grandparents and quickly made it inside. We ran in and told my grandmother, who of course didn't believe us, and told us to go back outside to play. So my cousin and I went back outside. Still spooked, neither of us felt like playing and just sat on the front porch. Soon the guy drove back and slowed down as he passed. We ran back in to tell my grandmother, who again didn't believe us and told us to go back outside. Well, the third time of us coming in and interrupting her soap opera, she finally came out to the front porch, and at the same time the guy passed again. She called the police, and when we were talking to the police officer, the guy drove by again and we pointed him out. But the police officer just took our statement and left. We never saw the guy again. I would like to think that the police officer pulled him over and scared him into not bothering us again, but I highly doubt it. We were at a Sportsman warehouse in Colorado with our parents. I was 14 and my brother was 12. We were on a trip to see family. So we were about done walking around and decided to sit down on a camping chair while we waited for our parents to get done shopping. While we were sitting there, a lady that looked cracked up on some sort of drug walked up to us and started asking us weird questions. She asked us, "Where is the Colorado River? Can you show me on this map in the front where the Colorado River is?" There's this map of the US in front of the store, right by the entrance. She kept telling us to walk up there with her because she needed help finding the Colorado River on it. We were both weirded out and started to walk to find our parents. She kept following us and didn't stop. We found our parents and told them what happened. My mom started to yell at the lady, but she wasn't going away even after that. We checked out and started leaving the store. When we walked out, we saw the creepy lady and 3 or 4 men run out the store towards a van that was hidden out of camera view. 2 of the men were waiting outside the store, and that's when I realized what was happening. The lady wanted my little brother and I to go to the front of the store so that the 2 men could abduct us and run to the van. I'm so glad we followed our instincts and didn't follow the lady. To this day, I'm still very cautious when I go into town, especially because I live near the border of Mexico. Don't talk to strangers, even if you are an adult. You never know how many people are in on the abduction. I started a new job this month, and my workplace is only 2 blocks away from the bus stop, with one of those blocks being a public sport place with a public pool and running tracks, etc. I always go through there instead of around because it's shorter and busier, so I feel safe. However, the next block is quite lonely, with not a lot of traffic from cars or people. This morning I was about to cross the street and an SUV stopped. I didn't find it weird because I thought the driver was being kind and letting me cross before continuing on their way. After that, I kept walking really slowly because I always make sure to arrive exactly on time, and I was like 5 minutes early today. As I was about to turn right, I finally realized that the same SUV was a little bit in front of me, almost at my side, turning right really slowly. My workplace is surrounded by houses and a decent neighborhood, so when I saw him driving slowly, I just assumed that he was going to go park in front of his house. However, he didn't stop, and I thought, oh well, maybe he has to open the gate on the porch. I don't know. But instead of getting out of the car, he just stayed in there. That freaked me out, but I kept walking. Like I said, really slowly. When I was about to be at the side of the car, I didn't know what to do. Should I run? Walk normally until I pass him? Or what? So I started walking more quickly, and when I was on the side of the car, he waved or did a sign at me. I don't know. I didn't catch it clearly. I ignored him and finally passed him, but once I did, he started the engine again, and he was right by my side. I finally arrived at my workplace, and he stopped again. I quickly rang the bell. I can actually open the door from the outside, but I didn't want him to see how. Also, by ringing the bell, I was basically telling other people to come outside for me. Immediately after I rang the bell, he accelerated and left. I feel really bad for not memorizing his license plate number, or even remembering his face. I really hope that no other girl has to go through this. Even if I had all his information, I'm from a third world country, so police won't do anything about a potential creep. Now I'm scared. What if he comes back? What should I do? He knows where I work. Okay, I'm just looking for opinions on this encounter, because although it was years ago, I always think about it and wonder, what the fuck? So basically, we were crossing the border from Costa Rica to Nicaragua. The border has a long-standing line where you have to wait to go through the border control, and there's a bunch of taxis on the other side. The line is long. My friend and I, both female and 23 at the time, we were at the back of the line. This man comes up to us speaking Spanish. We don't understand, but he guides us towards the front. We don't understand, but he guides us to the front of the line and puts us next to two other American girls. We are confused and ask what is going on, but he says in broken English, "You four together. I take you in taxi." We think it's weird, but we did skip some of the line, so we stay next to the girls. We talk to them, and we all agree that we think it's very strange that he put four young backpacking girls together when we clearly didn't know each other, and is aggressively making sure that we get in his taxi once we cross the border. Anyways, we cross the border and he's waiting for us. He begins leading us to his taxi. We tell him no and immediately jump into another taxi with two male backpackers who seem safe. As we look back, we see another guy yelling at the guy who is trying to get us to come with him. They are fighting. He seems to maybe even hit him in the head for possibly not getting us in his car. Was this normal, or was he about to traffic all four of us? Bad vibes here. This next story is my mother-in-law's story. I was about 9 years old when I attended catechism school. It was like any other day, until it wasn't. I remember like it was yesterday. It was getting close to Christmas as I attended my weekly class, and when I finished, I always walked home. As I was on my way home, there was this old, rusted beige, four-door car parked on the side of the road with a man leaning over into the car. He was wearing dirty jeans and had a long-sleeved shirt on with what appeared to be work boots. I kept my head down and continued to pass by him until he said, "Hey, excuse me." I stopped and turned around. "Yes? Can you please help me? My car won't start." I stood there and just stared at him. He then continued talking, asking me to help push something in, as he couldn't reach it. I walked closer to the door and looked inside. I leaned over to push a button from inside. Little did I know at the time, it was just a cigarette lighter. As I started to get up, he put his hands on my butt, trying to push me into the car. He said, "No, you have to get all the way in to press it." I screamed on the top of my lungs. All right, he said as he stepped away. I quickly got out of the car and started walking away. The man gets in his car and starts driving in my direction. He pulled up right next to me and said, "Are you sure you don't want to come home with me?" I screamed and he sped off. After he was out of sight, I ran home and didn't stop running until I reached the front door. I was out of breath, scared out of my mind. I ran to my room and slammed the door, crying my eyes out. My sister came in my room. She's 5 years older than me. She asked me what's wrong. I told her everything that happened. She told me that we needed to tell my mom. As she started to walk out the door, I grabbed her arm. "No, don't. Don't tell Mom." I didn't want my mom to find out, as I thought I would get in trouble. My sister ended up telling my mom, and she called the cops. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. I was scared and hid in my room. There were 2 policemen standing at my door. They came in and sat down and asked what happened. Scared as I was, I told them everything. They asked my mom if she would be willing to take me down to the station to look through a book so I could possibly point them out. Looking through the book of men, I spotted him, the guy that tried to kidnap me. "Him," I shouted, pointing at his picture. "That is the man." The officer said, "Thank you. You did good." We went home, and about a week later, the police officer came back to the house and asked me to point out the guy who tried to kidnap me from another book. I pointed out the same guy in 2 different books at different times. They thanked us for our time and left. That night, I went to sleep and woke up screaming from a nightmare. My mom came running in, and I was crying. "What's wrong? What happened?" "The man, he took me. He threw me in his car and took me home. He hung me on his tree. He put me on the top of his tree like an ornament, hanging me on the tip of the tree." My mom told me it was a dream. I was so scared I slept with my parents that night. The next day, my mom called the police office and asked them what was going to happen. The policeman said since he didn't physically harm me or kidnap me, they couldn't do anything. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was young, but attempted kidnapping and they did nothing? Years later, when I was much older, I found out that years after he tried to kidnap me, he got someone else and ended up killing her. That could have been me. One night, around 3 a.m., I was sitting at home on the PC, watching movies, playing games, etc., when I noticed I'm out of cigarettes. The only thing that's open late at night is our local gas station not too far from my house, but it's still easier to go by car. I took my keys and locked the house and went to the gas station. I live in a small European country, which is the most safe country on the planet. Still, that doesn't mean that bad things don't happen here and there. When I exit from the suburban area I live in, you need to take a right to take the main road. After that, you can just go straight for half a kilometer and then go another half kilometer to get to the gas station. On the way, I noticed some girl on the sidewalk. I usually drive slower at night because a lot of times people would speed and go through red lights at this time. She was walking faster than usual. It looked like she was panicked, and I noticed 2 guys behind her who were about 10 feet away, maybe less, pointing at her and doing some hand gestures towards her. They gave me a real creepy vibe. As I got closer, I noticed the girl had a scary look on her face, like she was about to cry, but she didn't. So I pulled over close to her and very quietly said, "Are you in trouble?" She looked at me and gave me a head nod. I told her to get into the car, and she did. I told her I was going to the gas station to buy some cigarettes, and that I would take her home after I finished. She thanked me, like 100 times. I asked her if she wanted to report it to the police, but she said she only wanted me to take her home. I went to the gas station, bought some cigarettes, and a bottle of water for her. She was clearly in fear. I took her home right after that. We passed the same street where those two guys followed her, but those guys were nowhere to be seen. Imagine if I didn't run out of cigarettes that night. When I was a kid, no older than 10, I was walking to the mailbox to get the mail for my parents. I was fully clad in my baseball uniform, ready to go. A car pulled over and an elderly woman urged me to get in the car. Immediately, I knew something was up. "Come on, we're going to be late," she insisted. She went on saying that my bat and glove were in the trunk, telling me that my dad had given it to them. She said my dad couldn't take me anymore, so he asked them to take me since they lived nearby. I honestly don't remember what I did. I just remember the anxiety from piecing together what was happening. I want to say that I booked it and ran into the house, but as I've gotten older, I don't even remember anymore. All I remember is being back at the house, and the creepy lady ended up ringing the doorbell. When my dad answered it, he was obviously confused, and she told him that they were testing me to see if I would jump in the car. The most unsettling thing to me is, I don't remember if I actually got in their car. I'm not particularly old, but the experience pumped so much adrenaline into me that I truly don't remember it well. I try to remember. I can picture both outcomes of me running home and me going into the car. I don't remember getting scolded, so I tend to assume that the former occurred, but I'm still not sure. Testing a child or not, what a fucked up thing to do in your free time. It makes me wonder if this couple actually had the intentions they spoke of. I remember getting home and not saying a word to my parents. The shock was still fresh, and I had no time to process what just happened. Was ringing the doorbell afterwards some sort of cover-up for a failed attempt to avoid being reported to the cops? Has anyone ever encountered something similar? I just find this whole situation extremely off-putting. You don't really find too many kids walking alone with their baseball uniforms, and coming up with that on the fly gives off the impression that this wasn't this lady's first time trying to coax a kid into her car. So I have many creepy stories to share, but I'll start with this one. This happened when I was 13, and it definitely looked like a 13-year-old. I was a late bloomer. I was walking to a friend's house, about a 20-minute walk on a summer's evening, so it was still daylight. A middle-aged man in a car slowed down and asked me where I was going and if I wanted to get in, and he would take me. I giggled like a teenage girl does, and said no politely and continued walking. He drove off and did a U-turn back to me, this time demanding that I get in his car. Teenage me gives the attitude and makes a face and continued walking. He starts revving his engine, speeding back and forth enough times to remember his license plate. By the time I got to my friend's house, I had let the encounter slip my mind. Fast forward a few days. I brought it up in general chit-chat with my mom, and she was horrified. She called the police. I was mortified because she was embarrassing me, and I could take care of myself. Anyway, the police came and took my statement. Remembering the license plate came in handy. They went straight to his house, where his wife said that he was with her the whole evening. The police came back to me, saying he matched the description I gave them, and that he's been given a slap on the wrist. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall once the police left. As an adult now, I'd love to know what he wanted with a 13-year-old child. I'm a female, 25, and I work on a cruise ship, visiting countries around the world. Sounds cool, but it's hard work and may put you in some weird situations. This day, I was transferred from one ship to another. Usually, when you disembark from a ship, you leave with many other people disembarking and get into a bus hired by the company to take you to the airport. Well, this time was different. I was leaving the ship in the middle of the cruise, and I was the only one. It was my first time in that country, North Europe, and I get out of the ship next to the crew admin and find two different cars with two different drivers to take me to the airport. The admin is the one that made contact with them, and she is lost, no idea which is the correct one. One of them started to grab my luggage and putting it in the trunk, and the other approaches to stop him. They start arguing badly in their language, which none of us could understand. She then asked for the credentials of both to decide whom she would send me with. Needless to say, my mind at that point was going as far as the idea of human trafficking or other possibilities, and I did tell her that. Her face seemed concerned and confused as well the whole time. One of them gave her an ID with a picture and a company logo. The other one, only a business card from the company. She then said she was going to check them, and I thought, good, we'll see what's going on here. But she straight away sent me with the first one, the one that has that ID card, as she says she knows the names of the company. Well, of course, I didn't go chill. In the car, I was sending messages to my mom and boyfriend, sharing my location and explaining what was going on. Also, I opened Google Maps to see if we were going in the right direction. The driver then starts a voice call, also arguing with someone, and I try to download as fast as I can a translator so I can record and get the meaning. When I finally got it, he finishes the call and does not start another. He does not talk to me at any moment and keeps an unfriendly expression. I proceeded to check Google Maps, and to my despair, he does not take me the route I was hoping for. He then stops in a place that looked like a bus station, leaves the car, and starts taking my luggage out. I ask, what is this place? And he says it's the airport, and we need to go to the immigration. I follow him to the entry, and it's a huge building, so I do believe maybe it's an airport, just a different entrance, but I'm not yet chill. He takes me to this corridor. We finally check my documents with the officer, and he leaves me there. Okay then, I finally breathed. To this day, I didn't find out if the other driver was official or not. Once you leave the ship, you hardly have contact again with the people working there. It could have been something very innocent, but maybe my gut didn't trust that at all. I don't know if you consider this story really eerie, but I know I was scared, and I wanted to share it with someone. Hey everyone, before I begin, this has been reported to the local police with as much detail as possible. I have been searching for several hours on who to reach out to or how to put into words something I went through this evening. I came across this thread, seeing someone post a similar thing last year. Tonight, my girlfriend, 22 female, and I, 23 female, were heading home from a picnic at our local park. As we drove away from the park and approached the stop sign, I noticed that there was a car parked at the stop sign. I remember thinking to myself that seemed really odd. We pulled up to the car and stopped, and when I looked over I saw a man, his wrists tied together, a terrifying expression on his face as if he was screaming and crying for help. I froze and asked my girlfriend if she had seen what I had. As we pulled just forward from the car, she asked what I saw, turned around, and he was still there, wrists together on the steering wheel, staring and making eye contact with her. We both panicked, asking, do we call 911? Do we circle back around? Trying to make sense of what we just saw, and I think it both hit us at the same time when we realized that it was most likely a tactic to lure us closer to his car. I know I've personally read multiple stories of possible trafficking tactics happening in my country. I am lucky to have seen these and knew to get away as soon as I could. Sure enough, when we drove off, he followed us for about a half a mile until we got to a busier road and lost him. I have been in a state of fear and confusion and panic ever since. It may seem like an overreaction, but I have 1. Never been in a fearful situation such as this. 2. Never seen someone tied up in possible danger. Before recognizing the signs, of course. I guess I'm looking for reassurance, wondering if anyone out there has been in a similar situation. I'm really shaken up by this, and truly baffled that we live in a world where this happens. Stay safe, everyone. I've been clean from all drugs since 2019. It took me a while to write this. I never thought I would be posting this because of how stupid I was and the stupid mistakes I made. I know I'll get all the duh comments, so don't even say it. I already know. I'm telling this story to remind people that everyone's intentions are not what they say they are. I am mentally traumatized from this experience, and I get reminders of it every day. I'm grateful to be alive and have no idea what would have happened if I didn't get away when I did. So save the rude and cruel comments. Thanks. This story is based in September 2017, I believe. Such a fucking blur. I did whatever I could to survive in this harsh world, so please no judgment. I was on the streets, no family, and a soon-to-be meth addiction. Backstory, I started using crack in 2015 and figured out that if I sold my body, I could make easy money. I know, not ideal, but I was deep in addiction, and at that point, I didn't care about anything. January 2017, I met Ty, who also smoked crack, but worked every day, so I no longer had to do that. I was going on like 8 months free from selling my body and my soul. Also, when I met Ty, he had a place in the big city, and he did a lot of work for people in the city. I was left on the streets by the man I had thought loved me at the time. I must have said something wrong because he flipped out and left with everything I own in his truck. Fuck, we had just spent 2 days getting high, and I was sure he was just throwing a fit. So I went over to my friend's, let's call him E's house. It was my home away from home, and I felt safe there. E was an older, maybe 60-year-old man who liked to get high, and over time became one of my best friends. I was able to take a shower and put on clean clothes. When I was done, I remember sitting on the couch with disbelief that Ty would just leave me like that. I started crying and wishing things had been different, while E held me and comforted me. I knew deep down that I needed a fresh start, to depend on myself and live a happy life. Across the street from E's house was a hometown bar where rappers and musicians would perform, and on that particular night the bar had been filled with people from the bigger city about a half an hour away. Let me explain. Where I come from, there isn't a place for addicts to get clean. They do have women's shelters, which I have been to before. About 30 minutes away in the bigger city, where they have all the help you can ask for if you're willing to do the work. At this point, I was ready to get away from everyone and everything. I had no hope of cleaning up my life if I stayed anywhere close to where I was using. Remember, you have to remove the old playmates, playthings, and playgrounds, so that's what I needed to do. I went right over to the bar and found a semi-good-looking guy headed back to the city I needed to go to. I told him I planned to go to a shelter in the morning, and he told me I could just go with him and he would take me in the morning. On the ride, I remember feeling like 100 bricks lifted off my shoulders. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and an Obama phone with no minutes. The guy I was with had a pretty sweet ride. I said, "You don't fuck with this, right?" And I pulled out my crack pipe. He shook his head, so I rolled down my window and just let it go. I knew I was going to be in the shelter and had to get better. Not just for me, but I had kids and a family that at that time still hoped that I would get better. I wanted to start over. I just didn't know how hard it was going to be. Me and this random dude go to his friend's house and smoke a blunt, and I don't remember anything after that. I woke up on the floor of a clean room. I mean, clean. There was nothing in it. It smelled like paint. As I looked around, I realized this was the place dude was talking about moving into. I got up, and he took me to get coffee, and then right over to the shelter. I was fucking terrified of what I was walking into. I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was I needed to better my life, and I needed to do it now. As we drove into downtown, I got a little nervous because I knew that downtown was full of crime and drug dealers, big buildings and confusing signs, tons of people and traffic. I then realized I was gonna have to work really hard to get my life back. We pulled onto the street, and before I knew it, he was dropping me off. There I was, standing in the big, beautiful, clean lobby, just feeling lost and broken. I had been with Ty for almost 7 months, and this was the first time he left me like this, so I was kind of hurt over that. I knew he had been seeing someone else in our recent month breakup, and he wasn't afraid to show it. This place smelled like lime, with spotless white walls. I walked up to the desk and was asked if I was homeless. Yes, I said. She didn't even ask me any more questions. She just looked at me with the sad eyes and said, "Okay, hon, let's get you set up." She took me to a small room full of boxes, and she hands me one. She explained it was for my personal things. I looked at her with unsettling eyes and replied, "I don't have any belongings. I had lost everything the night before." The nice lady gave me some toiletries and a pair of leggings. Next was intake, where I had to answer a bunch of questions, and was handed a paper with all the rules on it, and on the top of the piece of paper, it stated there was no Wi-Fi in or around the building. You had to go down to the stop sign to get internet. My phone was off, but I could still use the Wi-Fi, but at that time, I really wasn't worried about it. I knew Ty was already probably staying with that other girl. Michelle was her name, so I didn't feel it was necessary to even try to use my phone. I decided to cut off everyone and try to be different. When she was done giving me the rundown on how things worked, she took me into the day room. Walking from the lobby was weird, and I remember feeling sick going through those double doors with the stairs off to the left. Under the stairs was a pile of mats. I was told to grab one. I followed her through the double doors into the day room, which was huge. It was filled with at least 50 females, a lot of older ladies with nowhere to go, but it was loud and bright. The walls to my left were full of lockers, which I was told to get one if I stayed there long enough, and in front of the wall about 10 to 15 tables set up where most of the girls were sitting playing cards, coloring, and talking. The other side of the room was a shower bathroom, and a small TV sat in the cart on wheels. Next to the cart was a table that had electrical strips full of chargers and phones. In the far back corner was a door that led outside to go smoke. It was nice. There were picnic tables and lawn chairs set up, with a huge fence in the yard for the kids to play in. When 7 p.m. hit, the whole dynamic of the room changed. Everyone was moving around. People were running in and out. Then you hear over the speaker, "Roll call." Then you were instructed to go and get one mat to sleep on. They passed out blankets and pillows to those who were without them, and they let us keep the TV on. The first night was scary and lonely. Here I was in a strange place, not even 2 full days clean, off a week-long crack binge. I was up half the night, and my head was just racing. I finally fell asleep when the other girls started to get quiet. The morning came way too fast, and the rule was, you had to get up by 7 a.m. You didn't have to leave, but you had to get up. A lot of the older ladies didn't leave the shelter. They knew they had a place to stay and had nothing else to do all day, so they hung out together at the shelter all day long. I had to go upstairs for breakfast, which was okay. I'm not really a breakfast food person, but that morning I was starving. I had a whole damn eggs, bacon, and milk. After breakfast, I went outside for a smoke, and I noticed a teeny black girl with cornrows in her hair had some cards in her back pocket. I had been playing cards since I was a kid. My dad had taught me a few games. I played with friends, and I also had done some time in jail in the past. I was lonely. I didn't know where anything was, and it was obvious I needed help. I asked the girl her name and if she wanted to come play cards, and after 2 games we had a connection. She was cool and she liked me, so I was okay with that. I can be awkward around new people, and females tend to not like me, so I find it hard sometimes to make friends. She asked me after playing a few more games of Rummy if I wanted to go into McDonald's with her. I was cool with that, because I needed to learn the area anyway. On the walk there, as I was talking, something caught my eye. So I looked up, and there was fucking Ty, with all of my belongings in his truck right by us. I tried to call, but he ignored me every time. Guess he was done with me for good this time. That crushed me. I wanted to fall to the ground and just sink till I disappeared, but instead I got about 10 different emotions running through my body all at once. I was so angry that he was looking for some reason to leave me. Since a month before, we broke up, and I stayed at my dad's for a while. That's when he started seeing Michelle. I was just absolutely devastated. We continued our walk to McDonald's, and I was silent and broken. That night was easier to sleep because I was exhausted from not having any sleep and just feeling done. I slept like a baby, to be honest. The next day, Mish wanted to show me the place that she goes to for free lunch. The only thing was, it was a church, and we had to sit through a 30-minute sermon, which I guess was cool with me. We were standing outside waiting for the church to open their doors, and this blackened out Mercedes-Benz with a trailer hauling a badass Harley pulled up and parked in front of the church. I then heard my loudmouth say, "Damn, that's a nice fucking setup." I looked at Mish, and she looked back at the Harley. That's when I saw him. I specifically remember everyone knowing who he was. Will is what they called him. I remember getting excited to meet new people and to be part of a new community. Everyone was really nice going into that church. A guy at the door gave us a pamphlet of meal times and services offered. I followed Mish to one of the back pews and slid in behind her. The church was pretty, different colors, and there was a choir singing in a low, almost quiet tone as people were taking their seats. I kind of froze when I saw that guy I saw come in. Will sat next to me. I looked at Mish and then quickly noticed the guy's gold watch. It could have been fake, but it almost looked like a Rolex. He was an older black gentleman, talked real smooth when he introduced himself, with his hand out. I was shocked that he wanted to shake my hand. No one in my life does that. I shook his hand, and they were creamy, like he took very good care of them, and obviously does not work a physically demanding job. He was nice dressed, and had his pimp hat on, like a fedora. It even had a feather in it. His cologne was strong, but smelled good, like a man. He was handsome and smooth. He was also very confident. Sitting through the sermon, I found it hard to pay attention to the preacher. I remember looking at his clean, shiny black leather shoes and his socks that were black and thick. When the service was finally over, people started heading out into the dining area. I just followed Mish and we got our food. She picked an empty space to eat on one of the ends of a long table full of chairs. Not even 5 minutes, not paying attention to our surroundings, just eating. Will came over and sat 3 seats away from me. He looked at Mish and said, "Do you mind?" I know I didn't see any red flags. Of course I see them now, but looking back I was so clueless. He hardly said a word the whole time we were eating, and when he was done he got up and threw stuff away, and I assumed he left. Mish and I decided to go home and play some cards and go to the clothing bank she knew of. We were walking home and talking when he pulled up next to us. He rolled down his window and asked if we needed a ride home, but he was looking at me with a steep stare. I looked back at Mish and she refused. Smart girl. And I went with him. I'm a dumb girl. I think I was more curious than anything. I did not know how he made that kind of money, and I remember wanting that. We drove around till curfew and just talked. I don't know what it was. I think we had a lot in common, and we related a lot. He asked me how I ended up at the shelter, and just asked me questions, and I told him. I don't know what it was. I'm not sure if I trusted him, but I told him about my past anyway. How I sold my body for drugs, how horrible it was, and I even said I'm glad I didn't do it anymore. He didn't really say much about it, and we agreed that we would continue our talk the next day. He said he would help me put in a couple applications, and he had some errands to do too. I woke up the next morning to a text from Will that said, "What if you made that kind of money, but spent it on yourself, not drugs? Everything you make will go to building your life. Just think about it." I thought about it. I'm not going to say why I agreed and went on with the idea that this would work and I could actually get my life together and my kids back. $200 a half an hour. I could be free. I chose to go with him. At that time, I thought I wanted to be with him, but really, I just wanted a way out of the situation I was in. I hated that stinky, loud shelter. I wanted out. He got me a room at the motel, and we dropped off my stuff, and he told me that I needed some new clothes. He did tell me that he had just got fired from a trucking company. He was a truck driver. He was currently trying to find another job, as far as I knew. He took me shopping and got me a few new outfits, more or less outfits to take pictures in to bring in money. I knew what I was getting into, but I was preparing my mind to handle everything that was about to happen. Will did tell me that if I went with him, I had to stay clean and have a clear mind to make money and be smart. Looking back at how manipulative he was, made me believe that I would do this to make a better life. I started doing this a few times before I got addicted, a few times to make rent or bills, so I knew I could mentally do it, but I was still unsure about where this was going to go. We got back to the hotel and I do my thing. I take pictures to post them. It didn't take long before I started getting calls. I did make some money and I kept every penny, and Will took me shopping. I remember the shoes I bought. They were black and gold, baby fats. Oh, I loved those shoes. I got like 6 or 7 cute outfits, some makeup and hair dye. Remember, I came to the shelter with nothing, so being able to get all this stuff made me feel so good. I was confident in myself and was hopeful that I could get a place to start my new life within a few weeks, if days like that repeated itself. Remembering how things went, I am starting to think I was a part of his game, making girls think they could do it, and keeping the money and just trapping them and making them need you. It's sick. He tricked me. He made me think I could finally live a clean life. Yeah, I was escorting, but I treated it like a job. I bought another phone, so I had a new number, and used the Obama phone for work. I thought wrong. I later that day went back over to the shelter and grabbed one of the shirts I had and some personal things I left with Will. That night was cool. He was super chill. We talked in separate beds. We got 2 beds, and he didn't act like he was interested in me, which I was happy about because I didn't want to be with anyone. I needed a break from emotional attachment. After Ty left me, I felt like I wouldn't trust anyone like that in a long time. So I was happy that I was in a comfy bed watching TV, freshly showered, with money in my pocket. I had the best night's sleep and woke up to breakfast and time to get up and get myself together. He got up early, went and got us breakfast and coffee. He ate with me and then left, said that he would be back in a couple hours, take my time and do what I gotta do. So I did just that. While he was gone, I dyed my hair and the works. Not long after I was done, the door opens and a female walks in. She's pale and has a beautiful face, long pretty blonde hair that ran down to her shoulders. She was real petite, way too skinny, and size B chest. She had pretty big blue eyes and had dark circles under them. It looked like she had been crying, and she was carrying a black trash bag that contained all her possessions. Will walked in behind her and introduced her as Anna, and she needed help too. He instructed me to get her together, get her pretty and take some pictures and post them. He then told her to go and take a shower and asked to talk to me outside. We went outside the door, and as I was shutting it, his voice got real stern and said, "I see you have not made any money yet, and why the hell is that?" I tried to explain that Sundays were the slowest days. I would be lucky to make any money today, Before I could finish, he cut me off and said, "I don't give a fuck. You need to make some fucking money. What, you think this hotel pays for itself? I pay for it. I will pay for it tonight, but from now on, you pay half, and half of all expenses. Now go make some fucking money." I couldn't believe he was talking to me like this. I had never seen him mad, and his voice scared the hell out of me. I was looking at him when he cut me off, and I could see him get angry. His eyes got wide, and the white just disappeared, and they became all black. I was scared, but I did what he said. He left me alone for a while he went out and got food, and whatever he did. When Anna got out of the shower, her skin was more exposed as she walked out of the bathroom in a small towel. I knew she was addicted. I assumed heroin. She confirmed that after I asked her if it was going to be a problem not to do drugs because that was a rule for me. Why wouldn't it be a rule for the other girls? After my kid's father passed away from an overdose, I didn't like to surround myself with girls I knew I could get close to, so I cut that all out. And when she told me, I was like, "Okay, no girl, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to make some calls because you can't stay here." At this point, I didn't care what Will had to fucking say. I didn't want her here, period. As soon as he came to the door, I stopped him and took him outside. I told him I don't think I could work with her. I didn't want to be around a heroin addict, or any kind of addict for that matter. He did make her pack up her stuff and took her home. I think he was trying to please me for some reason. Will and I then rode the main street where all the girls walk and work. It was so weird. I don't know why I didn't just run then. I'll never know. About an hour or two of driving around, talking to a bunch of different girls, this random ass girl jumps in the car. It was crazy. They had known each other for years, I guess, and she had been looking for him and wanted to make some money. She was quite a bit older than me, but still really pretty, like beautiful. She had long, thick, curly, jet black hair. I didn't really get a good look at her until we were back at the hotel. Will told me he wanted to get a few girls together to make some big money. I was going to be number one, and that I would never post with another female, because I'm number one. He told me that was important, and we were building our own family. Amy was tall and thick, but she was gorgeous. Big blue eyes, pretty skin, small waist with a big round butt, and she was a straight up bitch. She took benzos. She was prescribed to them. I guess that's why he allowed it. It wasn't long before I couldn't help but watch her. She was popular, and then, like at night, she'd be falling out of nodding off. It drove me crazy. I think I even started to fight with Will about it once. I didn't think it was fair, honestly. Like, bitch can get high, but I can't. What Will would do was, during the day, he would leave me at the hotel to make money, and he took Amy to the street to work her. Well, it wasn't 2 days before they came home with yet another girl. A young one. 18. Her choice, no family. I only know what they tell me. Her name was Amanda. She was short like me, and a little chunky, which was okay. Guys like chunky too. She had blonde, long hair, and a cute face. She was sweet and didn't say much. I tried to get to know her a little better, but she wasn't around for long. I posted her with Amy, and she didn't get much feedback. Most people that were calling for Amy. Amanda stayed with us for a few days, but she decided that she wanted to go home. Will, Amy, and I didn't stay at the hotel for long. We ended up deep into the city, the furthest away from a hometown. Bigger room in a nicer hotel with a view of the whole city. It had a shitty microwave and a drive-up entrance to your room. Will and Amy brought back 2 girls that night. I don't remember them much because I wasn't involved with them much. I posted them, and the next day, we made money. Every time a girl would make money, they would give it to Will because he had them believing that he was saving it for them and getting them everything they wanted. I continued to make money on my own and also gave him my money. I got conspicuous, and I will never forget the moment I knew I was not safe. I was outside smoking a cigarette. I wasn't there long, but when I came back into the room, Will had all 3 girls posing on the bed, and he was coaching them how to pose and take snaps of them. I didn't say a word and closed the door slowly. I don't know why I felt the way I felt, but it didn't feel right. I don't know if he heard me open and close the door, but I heard him yell my name and said he needed me. He handed me his phone and told me to post the pictures. When I got on the website and tried to post the pictures, it now wanted money instead of posting ads for free. Will, unhappy, ran to wherever and put money on a card. When I tried to put the card in, it wouldn't accept it because it said it wanted bitcoins. I informed Will and even had to show him the page that it wasn't going to post, and he got furious and yelled at me. He turned and walked out of the room. I looked at everyone else and tried to apologize for his actions and to stay calm. It would be okay. He came right back in with a gun in his hand. I didn't even know he owned a gun. He hit me in the face with it and said I need to find somewhere else to post the ad, or I'm done, and then he left. I don't know if he realized that he did it in front of the 3 girls, and I don't know what "or I'm done" meant either. I was so fucking terrified that that's when I knew I had to find my way to escape. I learned real quick that I wasn't able to just leave anytime I wanted to. After Amy got involved, Will changed. He started talking about taking us girls to New York and making big money and travel and go from here and there, and that alone scared the hell out of me. I wanted to build my life to get my kids back, not leave the state to trick, or maybe be killed or abandoned. No fucking way. I got fearful for my life when the gun hit me. I've been punched like a man, but I have never been hit with a gun. That night, I had a couple dates set up, and Will knew he had to take the girls and leave. I decided to make my plan to get away. The first date, I made $200. I put $50 in my purse and put $50 in the pocket of my bra, hidden away, and left the rest on the table. The second date, I made $150, put half hidden away and the rest on the table. Will came in the door not long after I was finished and grabbed the money off the table. My purse was sitting right there, and I didn't see him do it, but he took the money out of my purse and said that he had to do something and left again. That's when I made my escape. I made 100 calls before I finally reached someone who was willing to help me. He had a friend come pick me up and bring me to his house. I'll never forget the feeling I had when I was running out to the car with a trash bag full of my stuff that I had collected in the past 3 weeks. I was scared to death that he would be coming up and see me. That feeling didn't leave until we hit the highway. I wanted to tell the story because I'd never been able to get through telling it. I couldn't help to think where I would be if I stayed, and if I would still be alive. So Will, let's not meet again.